Okay, let's unpack this. So for this deep dive, we're looking at a really fascinating custom stack of sources. It's this incredible blend of meticulous modern forensic science on one hand.
And this epic, sweeping ancient history on the other.
Exactly, and it's all held together by this really tantalizing Iron Age mystery. Our main figure, our guide through this, is a forensic anthropologist named Agnes.
Right, and she's 8 months into a posting in Ludlow, in England, when she gets called to investigate these remains that have been found deep inside a peat bog.
And what she finds just out, it completely challenges every single assumption. It plunges her right into two sort of parallel narratives. You have the modern world, high stakes, chaotic, full of climate protests and personal pressure.
And then you have the ancient world of the deceased, treacherous, politically charged, just as complex as our own.
So our mission today is really to synthesize these two timelines. We're here to try and uncover the Bog Queen's identity, piece together the brutal way she died.
And really understand the profound implications of her story, which has been hidden for so long. And it's not just for history, is it? It's for Agnes herself and the future she's trying to build.
That's the core of it.
It's an incredible stack. I mean,
Yeah.
It juxtaposes that cold, hard science with an intensely human story, but they're separated by 2 whole millennia.
It's amazing.
And Agnes, our scientist, she starts out just searching for objective truth. That's her whole world.
The facts.
Just the facts. But the sources make it so clear that the Bog Queen's story is tied up with fear and ambition and these huge global power shifts, even 2,000 years ago.
It feels surprisingly modern.
It does.
Yeah.
The narrative of this powerful Druid choosing an alliance with Rome and then a modern anthropologist choosing freedom over security. They really do resonate with each other in a surprising way.
Absolutely. So let's just jump right into the initial case, because it immediately shows you that nothing here is going to be as simple as it seems.
Right.
We start in April 2018 with what is essentially a case of mistaken identity.
Yeah, the first call Agnes gets is to identify remains that are believed to belong to a woman named Isabella Navarro.
Missing since 1961.
A very cold case. It's only just been cracked because Isabella's elderly husband finally confessed. It's a really sad, very modern element to this whole story.
And that confession gives us our first kind of official timeline. Her husband claimed they were fighting, and apparently they fought constantly. He was convinced she hated him.
Right.
And in the middle of this argument, she loses her footing and falls down the stone stairs to the basement.
And he buries her in the Ludlow moss, thinking she'll be found really quickly.
In a day or two, he says. Instead, her death just haunts him for decades. He describes her attacking him in his dreams, scratching and screaming.
So the discovery of the body, which he finally leads the authorities to, is meant to be a release for him, a final confession.
Right. And for Agnes, on paper, her job seems completely straightforward.
Totally. Just confirm the identity of Isabella Navarro, born 1940, and confirm the cause of death was blunt trauma consistent with a fall.
And the file even has a wedding photo from 1959.
It does, and Agnes, being Agnes, studies it. She notes that even in the photo, Isabella has this certain forcefulness, a strong chin. But there's also a physical vulnerability.
The kyphosis, right, the rounding of the shoulders.
Yes, exactly. It would have caused her significant pain if she'd lived. And these details, they really matter, because Agnes is looking for congruence. She's trying to match the living record with what the deceased remains are telling her.
But the second she walks into that exam room, her instincts just take over. She was warned the remains looked unusual, but what she sees is something far more profound. She even describes it as almost sacred.
Yeah.
So what is it about this body that triggers such an immediate, almost visceral reaction in a highly trained scientist like her?
Well, for Agnes, you have to understand that the act of witnessing the dead is her sanctuary. It's where she finds peace. The sources say that first moment of sight brings her the sense of joy and calm, a kind of clinical but deeply felt love.
So she sees this as a person who needs her specific care.
Skillful care that only she can offer, yeah. But when she sees this body, that feeling is just magnified by its condition. It's lying in a fetal position, hands folded up beneath the head.
And right away, the state of preservation is a huge problem for that 1961 timeline.
Oh, a massive problem. The body was found in Ludlow moss. The lower half is skeletonized. Some of the foot bones are even missing, just lost to the bog.
But the upper half?
The upper half is the anomaly. The skin from the waist up showed almost no sign of decay or degradation.
Which is impossible for a body that's been exposed for 57 years.
Scientifically impossible. She notes the cheeks are unlined, the skin is smooth around the eyes, and critically, Agnes spots a small round scar on the left arm, maybe from chickenpox or a childhood accident.
And there was something about the face, too.
Yes, a deep furrow in the brow. And she notes that, she shouldn't anthropomorphize, but the expression on the face suggests this intense, enduring rage.
Wow. A body held by the earth for centuries, just frozen in fury. Agnes is known for her pure, cool clarity. So what was the final definitive detail that made her just look at it and say, I'm sorry, this isn't her, and basically throw out the entire police file?
It was the totality of the preservation. I mean, a body from 1961 in that environment, even buried deep, it would be entirely skeletonized.
No question.
For her to see intact skin, recognizable facial features, a visible scar, she just knew instantly that the time frame was completely wrong. This kind of preservation points to a time depth of centuries, maybe even millennia.
So instantly nullifies the possibility of it being Isabella Navarro.
Absolutely. This was an ancient bog body.
Which means we really need to get into the science of bog preservation. Because it's not just a wet hole in the ground, is it? It's a chemical anomaly.
It really is. The sources explain that the moss itself is an active agent in this whole process. There's this great line where the narrative voice of the moss says, "We held her, we kept her safe under the surface in our bath of earth for many times her lifespan." And the key is the unique composition of these peat bogs, specifically the presence of sphagnum moss. As this moss decays, it releases these extraordinary levels of tannic acids.
Tannins,
Yeah.
like what you use to tan leather or what's in red wine, right?
Exactly the same principle. The acidic water acts as a natural tanning agent.
Yeah.
It turns the soft tissue, skin, hair, sometimes even internal organs into this dark, leathery substance.
And that process prevents decomposition.
It stops it in its tracks. And crucially, the bog water is also very cold and very dense, which creates an anaerobic environment.
Meaning very low in oxygen.
Extremely low. And since oxygen is what all the aerobic bacteria and fungi need to cause decay, their absence just means the body is locked in stasis.
So for Agnes, seeing that intact skin wasn't just an anomaly.
It was a sign. It meant this woman wasn't recently murdered. She was, maybe ritually, preserved in the deep, ancient center of the bog, which means she predates modern history entirely.
And that recognition immediately just catapults us out of the 21st century and straight into the world of the deceased, our Bog Queen. And here's where it gets really interesting. We switch narratives completely. We go to the world of the deceased, who we learn was this powerful, highly competent young druid from a northern town called Beretta, around 50 BCE.
And she wasn't just a religious figure. The sources are very clear on this. She was a true community leader.
Her reputation was well-earned then.
Absolutely. She'd been the successful druid for 2 seasons, and she brought order and prosperity. She reformed their record-keeping, for instance.
That's so.
Well, she implemented a clear marking system for family sheep to finally end these generational disputes between the lowland and the upland farmers.
I mean, can you imagine the civic frustration that's solved? That's huge.
It's massive. And on top of that, she successfully adjudicated this really serious, complicated legal case involving a blacksmith's son who lost 2 fingers in a threshing accident.
What was the outcome of that case? Because that sounds like a critical test of her impartiality.
It was. And she didn't just choose a side based on status. Her decision was seen as incredibly fair. The offending party had to pay 2 sheep and a goat to the family, plus all the threshed grain from the day of the injury.
So she ensured they got compensation and dignity.
Precisely. And maybe most importantly, her festival organization resulted in the richest harvest they'd had in 5 years. So, she was a figure of authority built on demonstrable results, not just on ancient tradition.
And all of this success leads to this pivotal event in her life, a very significant and very dangerous invitation.
Yeah, she was asked to make a pilgrimage to Camulodunum.
Which is modern-day Colchester, right? The first Roman settlement in Britain.
That's the one. She's invited to meet the new king there and secure an alliance.
This would have been a momentous journey. I mean, a huge political step.
Oh, huge. Even her mother, who was the previous very powerful druid, had never undertaken something like this. The whole town gets behind her, offering these substantial gifts to reinforce her diplomatic mission.
What kind of gift?
A shield, 3 arm rings, and a drinking cup. All of it designed to show off the quality of Beretta's forge and their wealth.
But before she even starts the journey, she performs this act of duty that links her fate directly back to Agnes's investigation in the modern day.
Yes, the offering at the moss.
Tell us about that.
She begins her journey by going back to the sacred ground of the moss for a solitary offering. She carries this stout, well-balanced broadsword, its pommel stamped with her village symbol.
And the sword itself was meant as the offering to the gods.
Exactly. She tested it against the bulrushes and then laid it atop the moss, and it just slipped right beneath the surface. It was an act of duty, of sacrifice.
And in that exact moment, the bog almost claims her.
It nearly does. She makes a false step, plunges her left leg knee-deep into the mire. Her first instinct is to jerk back, which is, of course, the worst thing you can do.
So how did she survive?
Her survival was entirely down to remembering her mother's ancient wisdom. Only the slowest, surest motion will make the mud release its grip.
So this incident just reinforces how treacherous the land is, but also her deep connection to it. She knew how to escape because of generations of knowledge.
Exactly. And just after this offering, she and her companions are intercepted by these men, Sago's men.
Now, Sago was supposed to be a friend, an ally.
He was, but now he's sending this warning about Roman influence, and the Druid is immediately suspicious of his motives.
What's the warning?
His men claim the king at Camalodunum is just a Roman puppet, and they share these truly gruesome stories to try and warn her off.
Like the story about the Lord at Clydon.
Yes, that one. It's horrible. They say he was disemboweled, his kidneys were cut out and fed to a crow. An act so evil, the sources note, that even the crow died.
That is a chilling detail.
It's meant to be. But the Druid, she sees right through the fear-mongering. She refuses to be controlled by Sago's posturing. She thinks about his childish fears and just declares that she would never expect him to guarantee her safety anyway.
So she's determined to go, to judge the alliance for herself.
Completely. She's convinced Sago's own ambition has made him unreliable, and she needs to see the situation with her own eyes.
Which culminates in her arrival at Camalodunum. I mean, how did this Roman-influenced city strike a Druid who was so steeped in earth and tradition?
It was a total sensory overload, a shock to her system. After passing through these massive, sophisticated fortifications, a huge rounded wall, a dry ditch, she feels this mix of apprehension and just soaring excitement.
She describes rich farmsteads.
Iron plows that glittered in the sun, houses clustered so closely you could step from one threshold to the next. It was majestic. It was modern. It was filled with new gods and the smell of unfamiliar spices and offerings.
So this wasn't just a British town anymore. It was a port of entry for Roman culture.
Absolutely. And she's immediately confronted with new, totally alien technology and Roman medicine.
This is after her group is handled roughly by the guards, right?
Yeah, they nearly kill her and they knock out one of her companion's teeth. After that, she's treated by a doctor. And in his room, she sees a small pottery vessel that produces light without a fire lamp.
Oh,
And the doctor revives her with something called salt of ammonia, which smelled like sweat but was used for fainting. Her brother, Isu, is urging caution, but the Druid is just. She's curious. She takes this pale powder mixed with water for her headache, hoping she can replicate it back home.
so she realizes there's a new kind of power here.
Yeah.
Knowledge.
Exactly. But the political climax of her visit comes not through any British custom, but through this terrifying Roman ritual, the Haruspec's divination.
For a Druid who reads the future in birds and clouds, how did she react to someone reading raw entrails?
She was both fascinated and deeply unnerved. The source calls it the extraction of knowledge from the basest parts of the animal. It was brutal, tactile, and the stakes were incredibly high.
Because it was all focused on determining the will of the Roman god Mars for the king's next military campaign.
Yes. The Haruspex examines the goat's lungs, its heart, its liver, and he speaks with this chilling authority.
And what specific details did he pull from the organs that pointed to military strategy?
It was incredibly detailed. First, he notes the enlarged left lung, which suggested to him that Mars's energies were unbalanced, maybe favoring one side in the conflict.
Okay.
But then the well-formed heartstring indicated that Mars preferred a direct approach in battle, rather than any sort of ambush or approach from a flank.
So that's a direct, actionable piece of military intelligence.
It is. But the truly chilling part came when the king asked about establishing a presence near her home near Beretta.
How did the Haruspex zero in on a strategic location from a goat's liver?
He sliced it open, traced these striations in the tissue, and he accurately predicted a strategic vulnerability near her home. He described a riverine location, emphasizing a preference for isolation and high ground, and he noted the liver's dry texture favored the element of earth.
That specific description, high ground near a pond or marsh, that points exactly to the rise above the little moss, doesn't it?
Exactly the spot. It's the precise strategic point her brother Isu had previously warned Sego about, which suggests this astonishing level of advanced Roman intelligence, or at least foresight, about the local geography.
They weren't just reading omens in some general way. They were pinpointing specific military targets with supernatural authority.
They were. And this confirmed for the Druid the depth of Roman reach. She realized the alliance was necessary, maybe unavoidable. The ritual ends with the test of the liver.
Right. The haruspex cuts pieces, and both the king and the druid have to taste them.
And the requirement was that the liver had to taste sweet. That would indicate Mars welcomed the alliance.
And despite the terror and the violence,
The Druid tasted it, and she confirmed to the whole assembled company, sweet, it's sweet.
she had chosen the alliance.
She had. Driven by political necessity and a bold belief that this king offered prosperity. But as we know, that alliance likely led directly to her death, through a chain of events that now stretches forward 2 millennia, right to Agnes.
So, jumping back to 2018, Agnes's investigation, now centered on an Iron Age body, is immediately complicated by all this modern-day chaos.
It is. The site of the find is right in the middle of a battle between a peat company and environmental activists. The sources call it the rewilding protest.
And this creates an immediate ethical quagmire for her.
A huge one. The activists, led by a man named Nicholas Bailey, are rightly furious. The peat company had drained this common land back in the 1990s using a drainage system that effectively killed the bog ecosystem.
So their motivation is climate activism.
Completely. The bog is a critical carbon sequesterer, and they are literally occupying the area to force the restoration of the water levels, the rewilding.
And Nicholas challenges Agnes directly, asking her to justify her work. He poses this fantastic philosophical question: is the body really what matters? Or is it the conversation the body opens up about the earth, the past, the future? Is that what really matters?
And that hits her right where she lives. Agnes defends her work, of course. She argues that the way someone dies is part of the story of their life, and that's a story that's owed to the dead.
But Nicholas just sees the immediate environmental catastrophe.
Yeah. Any excavation is just going to delay the rewilding process, and that potentially allows the peat company to win through inaction. It's a battle over timelines, really. Agnes is focused on the ancient past. Nicholas is focused on the immediate future.
And then, as if that wasn't enough, the legal and emotional pressure arrives in the form of Dorothea Navarro,
Isabella's niece.
who still believes her aunt has been found.
And Dorothea is grieving. She's sharp-featured. She's deeply insistent. She spent a lot of money to travel there, and she is desperate to bring her aunt home and bury her next to her mother.
So Agnes's carefully worded explanation that she was sorry if you were given inaccurate information, it just doesn't land.
It comes across as weak and unconvincing. Dorothea doesn't mince words at all. She essentially tells Agnes, nobody cares about your ancient body.
And then she offers Agnes this brutal political education, suggesting she use the press to create leverage.
Yeah, she wants Agnes to weaponize the family's grief. She tells her to go to the protesters and say, there is a grieving family here, and you are preventing us from laying our aunt to rest. She wants to use the media to pressure the activists.
Which forces Agnes to confront this messy, emotional reality of the present, which is so much harder than the clinical certainty of the past she's used to.
Exactly. And all of this external chaos is hitting Agnes at a moment of extreme personal vulnerability. She's facing professional failure, she's running out of money, and she's feeling like her experiment with independence has been a failure.
This personal history is really critical to understanding her desperation, isn't it?
It is. We need to acknowledge the depth of that pressure. Her whole commitment to forensic science, the careful witnessing of the dead, that was her sanctuary from the chaos of her own life.
Specifically, the smothering love of her father and her longtime partner, Colin.
Yes. They had created this kind of protected bubble around her.
Can you elaborate on that dynamic?
Mm-hmm.
Because it sounds less like support and more like a gentle imprisonment.
That's a good way to put it. They handled the groceries, the taxes. They even often spoke for her in daily interactions. And this enabled her academic excellence for sure, but it completely curtailed her autonomy.
And the source highlights a pivotal, really agonizing memory for her appendicitis.
Yes. While she's recovering, just sort of floating up from a morphine sleep, she overhears them discussing her future. They're talking about converting a room into a nursery, planning her pregnancy, dividing up childcare responsibilities.
All without her input.
A complete removal of her agency. She realized her future was being decided for her, and she says her body felt displaced. That moment is what drove her to apply for the farthest job she could find without telling them, the Manchester postdoc.
So her move to Ludlow wasn't just a career move.
It was an act of raw survival against a future she didn't choose. It necessitated this painful break with Colin. So if she fails here, she doesn't just lose a job. She loses the very freedom she fought so hard to gain.
Which makes her interaction with Ruby so crucial.
Yes, Ruby, the brilliant but very anxious Latin scholar, the daughter of her colleague Sunita.
And Ruby is really struggling with her own mortality. She hit her head during a panic attack because she thought she had skin cancer.
Ruby basically embodies the fear of the unknown, the fragility of life that Agnes had always tried to escape through the objective certainty of science. Ruby uses complex Latin translation like deciphering the story of Romulus and Remus as a puzzle.
To occupy her brain so she can't think about her own death.
Exactly. And Agnes connects with her by sharing her own defining childhood experience with death, which happened after her mother passed away. She tells Ruby the story of the dead house finch.
Why was watching that finch decompose so transformative for Agnes?
Because her father had always shielded her from the truth of death. But when Agnes found this finch and hid it, returning every day to watch it, she wasn't being morbid. She was observing a process.
The ants, the flies.
The busy maggots, yeah. The body was teeming, it was wild with life before the skeleton was finally exposed. She realized that death transforms life. It wasn't an ending, it was a continuation of the ecosystem.
So by telling Ruby, I used to be scared of dying too, and sharing that moment, Agnes makes this really profound shift.
She does. Her expertise moves from being a shield against life's chaos to being a tool for connection and solace for the living. And that changes the entire tenor of her investigation.
And that shift in perspective is actually what enables the big scientific breakthrough.
It is, because now she can entertain possibilities beyond just blunt trauma. She works tirelessly to establish the cause of death, initially expecting, the skull fractures and the abdominal wound to align with some kind of fatal attack.
But the forensic evidence completely flipped that narrative on its head. The CT scans of the skull. What did they reveal about the Bog Queen's wounds?
The evidence was just undeniable. The breaks in the skull showed the bright white of callousing.
New bone growth.
Exactly. The body's attempt to repair the damage. Agnes estimated that this trauma had happened weeks, maybe even months before her death. The skull was healing. With another month, it would have been good as new.
And the abdominal wounds supported this timeline.
It did, thanks to the pathologist Danielle's tissue analysis. She confirmed the wound was well on its way to closing it up. It showed inflammatory cells that indicated a healing response.
How old did she think the wound was?
A minimum of 2 weeks old. And this realization was the turning point. The woman was not killed by the violence inflicted on her. She was a survivor.
Which radically changes the Iron Age narrative. It suggests that whatever initial skirmish or ambush happened with Sego's men,
The event that caused the trauma.
she survived it. She recovered from it. Her actual death was something separate, which suggests a final profound betrayal.
Precisely. She was a fighter who endured, so the cause of death had to be found somewhere else. And at the same time, the forensic dig is yielding these subtle but really astonishing artifacts that confirm her journey to Camuodunan.
They found a scrap of lambskin or some kind of textile and a thin metal object. What made those artifacts so revolutionary?
Well, carbon dating placed them securely at around 50 BCE, but the metal object was the real game changer. Analysis confirmed it had traces of gum arabic.
Which is a binding agent for ink.
Yes, and soot and pitch. It confirmed it was an early form of an ink pen. And the gum arabic, which is sourced from acacia trees in North Africa, and the whole concept of writing itself, pointed directly to Roman influence.
That must have challenged the existing archaeological timelines for northern England.
Completely. The specialist, Jesper, noted that finding gum arabic in northern England at 50 BCE was just astonishing. The Druid was buried with these things, linking her directly to their creation.
So Jesper speculated that she wasn't just transporting the lambskin.
But that she was its creator, a woman of knowledge who embraced Roman technology to create a written record. It implied that written language arrived in northern England much earlier than previously believed, and it was carried by this courageous traveler.
But the ultimate cause of death was still a mystery. Until Ruby, the anxiety-ridden Latin scholar, offered the final piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, while Agnes and Sunita are just struggling, ruling out things like sepsis, which can follow serious wounds, Ruby interrupts them. She makes this casual but incredibly insightful comment. She just says, the Romans were kind of famous for poisoning people.
And that one line from a teenager shifts the entire focus from traumatic injury to chemical violence.
It did. Agnes realized the answer had to lie in Roman knowledge, specifically their use of powerful substances. She immediately ordered a toxicological screen on the Bog Queen's tissues.
And the finding was definitive.
Definitive. Evidence of opiate poisoning. Opium was widely used in the Roman Empire, both as a painkiller and, critically, as a virtually untraceable poison.
This provided the final tragic narrative twist. She survived the ambush. She survived the long, painful journey home.
And was then killed. Quietly, insidiously. Likely by someone she knew and trusted who had access to Roman medical knowledge.
A fatal dose of opiates. What would that have done?
It would have caused hallucinations, followed by neurological and respiratory collapse. Death would have come within hours. It's a far cry from the violent, heroic death you might have expected.
It just reinforces that theme of betrayal that Saga warned her about, but administered with Roman efficiency.
Exactly. And Agnes, now seeing her duty not just to analyze but to translate, stood on the rise above the bog and delivered the results to everyone who had gathered, protesters, pagans, journalists.
Her record, as the source calls it.
Her eulogy, yeah. It was precise and transformative. She confirmed the Bog Queen's size, her diet, you could see the erosion on her teeth from stone-ground grain, and the revolutionary finding of the pen and the lambskin.
And by confirming the healing trauma and the opiate poisoning, she corrected the historical record.
She did. She gave the Bog Queen a definitive, non-heroic, but profoundly meaningful end. She bore witness. She fulfilled her most critical duty.
But as the world turns its attention to this Iron Age woman, Agnes makes sure the modern victim, Isabella Navarro, isn't forgotten.
Right. The coroner's team finally finds Isabella's skeletal remains in the area that was not bog preserved.
And it was a rapid process.
Very. Just under a day to excavate and clean the remains. And the contrast with the Bog Queen is so stark. Isabella's body was just a skeleton, which confirms the difference between the bog environment and a regular burial.
The forensics confirmed she was 5'4".
Had a bunion, likely from years of wearing high-heeled shoes, and the gold filling. And most tragically, her parietal and occipital bones were shattered.
Consistent with a fatal blow to the back of the head.
Which confirmed her husband's confession was largely accurate. She died violently, likely from blunt force trauma during their argument.
So Agnes, having gone through her own transformation, approaches Dorothea Navarro to give her the inventory. Why did Agnes feel it was so necessary to go beyond just identifying the bones?
Because she was operating from a new ethical framework. She provided the definitive skeletal evidence, but she also noted a long-healed broken ulna, a childhood injury, and she offered to perform toxicological screening on the bone tissue for definitive answers.
It was a gesture of respect and thoroughness.
Exactly. She was fulfilling her duty to bear witness, but now she was translating that knowledge for the living, providing solace, not just data. And Dorothea was satisfied. She stood up, offered her hand, and acknowledged that their encounter had acquired some weight and import.
And while the stories of these two women found a kind of closure, the modern conflict over the moss reaches its legal conclusion.
And Nicholas's activist group lost the court battle against the peat company. The rewilding seemed doomed.
The defeat was crushing.
It was, and it forced Agnes to finally confront her place in the world. After this particularly difficult exchange with Nicholas, where she actually throws a handful of wet moss at his feet in frustration, she has this realization. She realizes that her job preserving the story of the past and Nicholas's job preserving the environment for the future were the same.
They were both fighting against erasure.
Exactly. And this realization leads to her pivotal act of sacrifice, of commitment.
She drafts this detailed 7-page proposal.
She does. It's a statement on the importance of preserving the Ludlow Moss as an anthropological site. She argues for reduced excavation, for the restoration of the surrounding peat. This is Agnes fully committing to advocacy.
She accepts the role of expert witness for the activists.
Even if it means sacrificing her ambition for tenure and career advancement, she saw it as a subsumption into something greater, like leaping into a great body of water, like letting go.
She had finally let go of the future that was planned for her.
Yes. And the community rallies for one final Beltane ritual, a perimeter walk. They see it as a wake for both the dead woman and the doomed landscape. And it's in this moment, soaked in rain, that Agnes has her final revelation about the Bog Queen's artifacts.
Her focus had shifted from just bones to the broader ecosystem.
It had. And she looks at the patterns on the lambskin, which she'd previously just dismissed as decoration. And tracing the whorls on her phone with Ruby's help, she realizes it's a map.
A map of the moss.
A map of the moss! A square representing the boundaries, north, south, west, east, with all the distinctive geographical features meticulously recorded.
She hadn't just carried a record, she created a navigational tool, a permanent record of her home. But the map also contained a secret, didn't it? A distinctive symbol in the southeast corner.
And the urgency to find that final secret was palpable. The discovery of the map leads right into this incredibly intimate human moment in the source material. Nicholas and Agnes, they're the only two left. They shed their wet clothes in the tent.
And share a moment that's described as quick and clumsy, but she feels no fear or awkwardness. Like setting aside all that was burdensome and finding her body a light and carefree thing.
She finally experiences the freedom she'd been craving.
And the next morning, Agnes goes back to the site. But she's guided not by protocol, but by intuition and the map.
Yes, that symbol in the southeast corner leads her to start digging on the bias, slanting down, and she breaks open this hardened carapace of peat to reveal something dense, something weighty.
The ultimate discovery.
The time-burnished pommel of a sword.
The sword she offered to the gods.
It was the final piece of the puzzle. The Druid had offered the sword before her journey, and she had created a map to ensure its retrieval. Or perhaps its ultimate discovery by future witnesses.
So when we put these two narratives together, what does this all mean? The Druid's mother was worried she'd be forgotten, yet the daughter engineered a legacy that survived for 2 millennia.
It's a profound testament to the human need for legacy versus the random nature of knowledge retrieval. The Bog Queen ensured her knowledge, the map, the pen, the sword, survive through these deliberate, symbolic acts.
And for Agnes, the story became a mirror.
It did. It forced her to confront her fear of failure, her whole identity being tied to her expertise. She had sought certainty in bones, but she found her purpose in translation and advocacy. Her ultimate success wasn't getting tenure or finding one definitive cause of death.
It was in translating the dead story for the living.
Even if that required combining the wisdom of activists, historians, and a teenage girl.
And finally, the ultimate kind of sobering perspective is given by the colony of moss itself, which has been watching all this frantic human activity for over 2,000 years.
Yeah, the moss views the digging, the machines, the protests, the science. It sees it all as entirely fleeting, just tolerated disturbances.
It's seen glaciers retreat and thousands of solstices.
It knows that human activity will eventually stop. And it remains supremely confident in its ability to endure and create the conditions it needs to thrive. It says, "We have always been able to make the world we need."
And that ancient ecological confidence just puts Agnes's entire frantic, ambitious journey into this profound context.
It does. Her moment of subsumption into the greater whole, into the bog, that was her finding peace.
That journey from scientific objectivity to human empathy and environmental advocacy, that's the real treasure of this deep dive.
Indeed. And it leaves us with a final, provocative thought. If our bodies and our environments contain these records of our lives, childhood injuries, betrayals, political choices, even poisons, what are the most crucial, the most deliberate pieces of evidence we are leaving behind right now, waiting to be found by future generations?